Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to share with you guys my final thoughts on the CJRB Ria. This is the Knife Center exclusive in marbled carbon fiber and S35 VN blade material. Just do a little up closey for you guys. As you can see, the carbon fiber is definitely on the matte side, but there are some very subtle micro milling lines that I definitely do appreciate. Satin finish on the blade, not really my thing personally, but there are a lot of things about this knife that I do want to share with you guys that actually really surprised me at this price point. And that price is actually $99.95. So just a couple cents under $100. I think this is plenty of knife, especially with good blade material and an interesting handle material. Plus you're getting a micro milled titanium pocket clip, which is quite nice. Let me show you that really quick. I'm going to be pulling some specs off of Knife Center's website right now, and then I have a little scale here off to the side to get a accurate weight. So the blade length on this is 2.95, closed length is 3.90, overall length is 6.86. We're talking blade material, thickness, 2.5 millimeters. Blade style, it says that it's a drop point, and yeah, this is probably one of the more interesting drop points. There's a lot of belly to this. It's slender back here at the heel, it widens up here, and it's not flat. It's I don't know, it's not leaf shaped either. It's doing its own thing, and there are some advantages and disadvantages to that, but it's nice because it is a fully flat ground knife, so it does move through material rather well, and the blade stock thickness is pretty darn thin. So full flat ground, thin stock, yeah, this thing is definitely a slicer for sure. It has stainless steel liners. There is some holes there for weight relief, nothing too crazy, just on the one side, and then on the liner side. Check that out. Hopefully you guys can see in there. Has one little steel standoff there at the back and a hidden lanyard tube there. So it's nice that they include it for people that like lanyards. I could definitely see how that could be an advantage for this relatively small size of a knife. And made in China, their weight, they say it's 2.12 ounces. Let's just go ahead and just check that. Yeah, cool, it's perfect. So this thing weighs, it doesn't weigh anything basically, which is quite impressive. So with that out of the way, I did want to mention that the Ria has been around for a good second, and I think most more of the more online popular retailers, they have their own like specialty ones, but there are so many different colorways and different materials. I've seen wooden ones, I've seen other carbon fiber ones. I could have sworn there was even like a plain weave carbon fiber one at some point, but this was the one that really caught my eye out of all of them. So mainly because of the blade material and because of the carbon fiber. So let's bust out some size comparison knives just to help you guys visualize what this little guy is all about. So in no particular order, we are starting with the Civivi Knives Elementum. As you can see, it is just a little bit larger, I guess longer than the Ria, and cutting edge is quite exactly the same, honestly. The only difference is how it's going to feel in hand, it being so slender. We have a Benchmade bug out, an Osborne 940, let's do a Spyderco Native 5, a ginormous PM2 in comparison, and last but not least, Demco, oh, fumbled on that one. Demco 8020.5. So yeah, pretty much all of my size comparison knives are monumental in comparison for sure. But yeah, there, like I mentioned before, there are a couple things about this knife that really caught my attention. One of them is mainly going to be the carbon fiber scale here. I didn't notice at first, but the pictures that are up on Knife Center's website, they don't really capture the little subtle micro milling lines that are on it, which I definitely do appreciate now having it in hand. But I have noticed that there are a couple little voids. So maybe it was tear out or an actual void, but there's one right there and one right there. I don't know if you guys could actually see them. Let's see if I can catch it in the light. Those little two black spots right there, those are actually little voids. So that's just where the composite material didn't completely, do its job and settle in. But at this price point, I'm not really gonna give it too much of a hard time, and it's on a very covered area. In my opinion, it's not something that you're gonna really see. It's not a giant eyesore. Thankfully, the show side scale is essentially perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It would have been cool if maybe those voids were somewhere under the clip or really hidden, but even under the clip and around it, there is no tear out. There's no weird marks or miscuts or anything like that. Everything looks relatively well machined. If there is something that looks a little off about this, I actually did swap the pivot around. Oh, this does have a captured pivot, and it actually works both ways. So coming from the factory, the adjustment side pivot was on the right side of the knife, but I think it's really stupid when manufacturers do that, and thankfully this knife allows me to take the decorative side of the pivot and put it on the right side because this is a right-handed knife only. Unfortunately, you can't flip the clip at all, but I would understand why, because it's only a single thumb-studded knife. And while this is the only single thumb-studded knife, try saying that 5 times fast, while this is the only knife that has this only deployment method, it's very restricting, and I could see how this could really only appeal to right-handed individuals. And it did take me some getting used to deploying it, because it is pretty tight in there. As you can see, it's right in the actual scale, so you can't really approach it how, let me see, like my bug out, I can do straight up, but if I do out, it works just as fine. But on this, if I do up, it either doesn't take or just becomes a little painful, but it has to be at kind of this angled motion, kind of popping outwards down that way instead of going up. So that's something that did take me a second to get used to. And anytime that I pick up this knife or go to my little hinderer or my some of my Hogue knives or my Benchmade knives, all the ones that I typically pick up a lot, I do definitely have to remember my first couple flips, I try hitting it straight up, and it can definitely work. But if I go anywhere inwards towards the handle or directly straight up, sometimes I miss it and it's very uncomfortable. But if you get it off to the side, because of how tight and well tuned the detent is, like it's a very strong detent for such a little knife, but it is very small and it's really easy to get to break past that detent and the blade just flies out. This does have some ceramic ball bearings, and it's definitely appreciated at this price point for sure. I was honestly expecting Foster Bronze washers, which I wouldn't have really much of an issue with that. It would have kept up. I'm sure eventually it would break in and be relatively smooth, but with this being such a light blade, it is actually still pretty darn smooth. So it does take one good little shake and it's coming straight down. So let's talk about the engagement here, or the disengagement actually. We already talked about the whole thing with the thumb studs. you can't really change it. Like I always like to talk about like what could have been done better, but you know, this was fully intentioned to be a single thumb studded knife. Really the only thing I could think about is maybe opening up that area for people with you know, larger hands or larger fingers. And that also leads me to talking about the access to the liner lock. Now looking at it straight down, you can see that the liners are just a hair proud. They're essentially shadow boxing the carbon fiber scales there, and everything is really well rounded off and softened, very premium feeling. You know, very nice, no jagged edges or nothing in the liners, even the holes. Everything was very well finished, and I definitely do appreciate that. But as you can see, it is very narrow in there, and eventually it does become a little uncomfortable to disengage that. Now, it doesn't take too much pressure to disengage, and the lockup is actually really darn solid. I've flicked this thing many times, just practicing, you know, getting this thing right, deploying it properly, and also just trying to break it in and some couch flipping and stuff like that. Took it to work probably, you know, 2 days, nothing crazy. But I've just been gravitating more towards other stuff that I bought around the time that I got this guy. So this unit honestly hasn't seen a whole lot of pocket time, but I feel like I've experienced it enough to comfortably talk about it. And there's a lot of good here, but there's a couple little, you know, things to watch out for. You know, it being, you know, the size that it is, it's a little tight to disengage the thumb stud. If you don't get it right, it could be a little uncomfortable. These are all things that are more than acceptable on a lot of other designs that are very popular. And this is actually a pretty popular design coming from CJRB. Now, I think this specific model gets overshadowed by things like the feldspar, the button lock. Which one is it? Oh no, the pyrite, and I think there's also a feldspar button lock. But there was a liner lock and even like a premium frame lock version. I didn't have a chance to check those out because the ones that I wanted just sold too fast, and the basic ones were just kind of too boring for me, and I didn't really feel like my money would have been well spent there. But so those seem more of a normal, very simple designs. They were trying to go with something very sleek and compact, and as you can see, this is a very not obtrusive design. It does go in and out of the pocket really well, and it fits perfectly right in the setting of being a more modern or more gentleman carry knife. So you know, looking at it in the pocket, it's not deep carry, but if one sits in the pocket, that's pretty much all that you see. You do have T6 screws. I was about to say T8, but okay, so for the pivot, it is a T8. It's kind of shallow, so just make sure that your bits are nice and bitey, you know, because eventually you will strip that out if your bits aren't, you know, nice and sharp. T8 also for the bottom here, and then they transition to T6s here for the clip screw, which not a big deal. It's a very common thing to have T6s for pocket clips. I understand with it being such a small, thin clip. I would critique typically on most other designs that have larger clips, wider clips to accommodate a T8. I think it could have been done, but the tolerances probably would have been a little too crazy for the company to be able to mass produce like they're probably used to doing with models like this. So T6 it is. And let's take a closer look at this pocket clip. So it's a very simple, contoured, popsicle styled pocket clip. It's nice that it's not sharp under there. That is something that I do notice sometimes on more budget oriented knives that, you know, have a higher price point because of a fancy pocket clip, typically, you know, in titanium material. And something I always notice it being a miss is it sometimes has a little bit of a sharpness to it there. This doesn't. This is perfectly fine. So it's definitely not going to tear up any slack or any nicer pant material, things like that. So the retention on it is quite positive. It's a very strong, stiff little clip. because of how short it is, and how just well rounded off, and it matches. It goes perfectly with it. There's no hot spot. You don't feel it at all, and you can actually get a pretty good grip on this thing. You can choke up a little bit if you really wanted to. You could go like this. You have your index finger pretty much all the way to the tip, and there's very, very controllable edge there. So if you want to do some more precision cuts and things like that, you can definitely achieve that with this little guy here. So, and it practically disappears inside of my hand. I have large to extra large size hands, but slim fingers. So that's why me personally, instead of like I've noticed some people in the growth of their channel, they started with smaller knives because maybe they're a little bit more affordable, and then they start moving into big knives because, you know, the big knives feel awesome and epic feeling in hand. But most of the time, something around the 3 inch is all that you really need. And this thing isn't trying to be something that it's not. You're not going to take something like this out and beat on it. You're not going to be chopping down trees. You're not going to be, you know, prying open anything. Definitely don't pry with a tip like that, for sure. But this is supposed to be a dedicated, you know, gentleman slicer knife to be, you know, whipped out anytime that you need to cut a strand off of a coat, or to cut open a small bag of something. I even use this to cut off the tip of a cigar, and with the factory edge, surprisingly, it did pretty darn well. No, I don't actually consume cigars too often, but you know, it was the time and the place, and I had this with me, and it felt just right. So this guy was definitely right at home in my pocket, in the setting that I was in. So it definitely played the part, which is very nice to say. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is a pretty recommendable knife, and for $100, that is right there at the budget price point, at least for this channel. I believe that, and you have to look. You really gotta look around, because there are some people that don't know that this colorway or variation exists, and I'm glad that I was here to share that with you guys, in case you guys didn't know. But there are plenty of them still in stock at Knife Center. I'll be linking it down in the description. I will actually be including this in my 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I'm trying to build a starter knife collection, and I think this is going to fill the void of my gentleman carry one, but I want to do a couple things to this. I want to do a couple modifications to just make it fit a little bit more into the setting. So what I'm planning to do with this little guy is I'm actually going to just be dipping the blade in ferrochloric acid to darken it. I'm going to put the finest stone wash that I can on it, but I want to keep it really dark because honestly, like, I think with the satin, it's so bright and shouty, and honestly, it looks really gross and cheap looking, especially if you just look at it. It gets pretty darn grimy quite easily, and it's hard to keep it looking nice. I know some people, they like satin because of, you know, the nice grind lines and everything, but on a blade shape like this, it's not something that really works. So me personally, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put an acid stone wash on here. I probably am gonna leave the hardware thumb stud and liners alone, but I would like to anodize the clip to probably a very light bronze. I'm still thinking about possibly torching the liners and hardware to be a bronze, but it is steel versus titanium. So, you know, while this I can, you know, guarantee get the color that I want with my little anodizing setup, you know, with with the Mapgas torch, something like this big thing, I can't even fit into the frame. But this guy right here, I just need more practice. So it's gonna be a second, but the knife will be, you know, ready to go essentially, and of course have a screaming sharp edge with my Wicked Edge sharpening system. So again, it still hasn't seen a whole lot of use. This is still the factory edge. And yeah, I mean, you can expect a couple of things at this price point. The edge isn't going to be super consistent, but after one sharpening and reprofiling, this thing will be even better from the factory. So I think this is definitely going to fill the space of the gentleman knife in the starter collection. And the idea behind that is I want to include a gentleman knife, a hard use knife, and then an EDC knife. So it's probably going to be 3 to 4 knives. The value of the collection isn't the starter collection thing. Isn't going to be anything crazy, anything super special. It's just 1,000 subscribers. It's nothing crazy. But I want to progressively do cooler and cooler giveaways, but all this stuff is coming out of pocket, of course. So it's going to be something that it's going to take some time, and I want to do things that are actually worth, you know, your guys' time, my time, and I want to put something out there that's actually special and might grab a good bit of people's attention. So if you guys are interested in that, stay tuned, definitely. If you guys like this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. If you guys are subscribed, thank you so much. I definitely appreciate it. If you guys aren't, go ahead and consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so that you are updated about possible future giveaways and collection updates, reviews, unboxings, and anything that I have to offer for you guys. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.